All right, welcome in, everybody. It's Tuesday. It is Sports Daily. We're glad to be here with you, however it is that you listen to the show, over the air, online, on our video stream. All kinds of different ways for you to tune in, and we appreciate you no matter how it is that you do that. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor here. Chad Chambers manning that IHOP hotline, which is brought to you by IHOP. You can visit IHOP. Try those new If movie-inspired menu flavors like the Coney Island Pizza Omelet. You can also call that number and talk to us, 869-1240. Glad to hear from you as we make our way through, getting ready for the summer a little bit, NBA playoffs. You got a couple of really good series happening. Most notably, I think, for us, Mavs Thunder, right down the road there, featuring the Oklahoma City Thunder, which I am a little curious of why that is not more of a local flavor. It's the closest pro team to us. But that series is really, really good as we expected. We can get into that in a little bit. Really, both of the Western Conference series are really good. And, the Eastern Conference series maybe. But the NBA playoffs are here. We can get into that. We'll talk some Royals, certainly. Game one losers out behind Seattle in the opener against Seattle's ace. I don't think it's anything, to worry too much about. But they do fall in that opener, and they're not going to get any pitching relief from the opposition in this series, most likely. So we'll see. They're going to have to work a little bit. We can talk about the Royals. We'll hit the rest of the topics out there in the sports world. Tommy, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Happy Tuesday. Good to be here today, and looking forward to jumping right in.
We've got Bronny James. There's reports that he'll, join the Lakers. I think that's a story that probably will get people a little bit fired up. A story about Justin Fields I'm kind of seeing this morning. I think it came out yesterday with his relationship with veteran quarterbacks. Of course, he's about to have a pretty important one with a veteran quarterback in Russell Wilson. Always good fodder for this time of the year, Tommy, to get into NFL quarterback drama. It's always plentiful and it's very giving to us here in this industry. But I cannot sway away from baseball right now, Tommy, for the NBA playoffs. Like if I'm power ranking, like every night, like last night, I'm watching baseball. I'm on Royals. I'm on the Rangers every night. I cannot go away, and I love it. It's because it's competitive. It's great, but the Royals are right there, and that was an interesting opening salvo. I think if we start with the Royals today in the opening game of that series to fall to Seattle.
Yeah, it was. And, Brady Singer didn't have, a great outing. It wasn't his best by any means. 4 earned runs, 9 hits, didn't really go super long in the game. And then, from there, just the offense, we've kind of come to expect that more often than not, they're not going to put a ton of runs up on the board. And so really the Royals have leaned on their starting pitching. That's really been the way that they've been able to stay above 500 during the course of the season is strong starting pitching, a fairly solid bullpen for the most part, and then really just getting enough runs to make sure that they're able to win games. They were not able to do that against the Mariners last night. They only scored 2 runs, but Brady Singer didn't have a good outing. That's not a very good recipe, for them to be able to get an opening win in the series opener.
It wasn't like a throwaway outing for Singer by any means.
But it wasn't great. It wasn't
not good.
Wasn't super
it
sharp.
wasn't even good, but it was it was enough to keep them in a game. The problem was you're going up against George Kirby, and when he's going, right, and he's been inconsistent this year, but when he is going, he's really, really good. And they just couldn't get enough offense. So, okay, wipe your hands clean of it. No big deal. But we mentioned with this series was going to be tough, and this will be something to watch for the Royals when it's not Reagan's most of the time, or it's not Lugo. And we know these other pitchers have been pretty good, but can those guys line up against really good starting pitching like you'll see in this series top to bottom? That is the strength of the Mariners. Their rotation is loaded. It's really good rotation. And can you do enough to score on those, opposing pitchers? I do think that that's going to be a problem for the Royals this year. The lineup is interesting. It's thin. We've talked about that, but against good pitching, it's going to have some deficiencies.
Yeah, and really, I mean, other than, again, Michael Massey driving in 2, it was a fairly quiet outing. And George Kirby, at least last night, looks like the ace of the rotation for the Mariners. And I know that it hasn't been all rainbows and butterflies, for George Kirby, but at least last night he looked the part. He looked the part of the ace
Yeah.
in that rotation for sure. Massey was 1 for 4, 2 RBIs, was able to drive in, those 2 runs, but nobody in the lineup last night had more than 1 hit. Michael Garcia, Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pascantino, Michael Massey, Nelson, they all went 1 for 3, 1 for 4. Salvi 0 for 3 in the game. So Kirby did a really good job overall of limiting the offense and limiting the hits in the game. Went 7 strong, only allowed 3 hits. It wasn't until, the bullpen came in, when Massey was able to get a couple runs on the board for the Royals. So they were stymied. They were shut down by George Kirby basically, through the first 7 innings of the ball game. And again, when you're not really a super dynamic, high-powered offense, and I think that we can both agree that's probably
Yeah.
not the Royals right now.
It's not
You've
the
got to
Royals right
lean
now,
on
Tommy.
that. You've got to lean on that starting pitching.
Yeah. It's not that right now. It's not going to be that.
Yeah.
I don't think. Like, I don't think they are adding enough when they go, hopefully get aggressive at the deadline to make this some dynamic Braves, Rangers, Dodgers-esque powerhouse. That's not going to happen.
So
It doesn't need to.
What's the ceiling then for the Kansas City offense? I mean, are you like maybe average? Is that the height of where, like, middle of the road offensive prowess for
I
Kansas
think
City?
I think you could go above average. It's not going to be one of those 1 through 9 juggernaut lineups. If we're looking across baseball right now, and you look at some of the metrics, right? So if you go to OPS and you rank that down, you've got the Royals right now right in the middle of the league, right? In OPS, 15th is where they rank there. So that's probably something you would live with. I don't know that we would project that out over the whole season with the current lineup. Runs scored, a little bit misleading because not everybody's played the same amount of games, so take that into consideration. The Royals are 10th, but they've played the most games in baseball too. So I don't know, I don't have the numbers on by game or whatever like that. They're not going to hit for a ton of power, right? They're league average in power, where I think that they will have the ability to really be disruptive is stealing bases, running. It's almost old school Royals, right? They're near the top of the league in stolen bases, 6th right now in the league in stolen bases, and they don't get caught very often. So they're doing a nice job there. Batting average when you're stealing bases and counting on those things, I think, Tommy, matters. They're right at the average. So in a lot of these numbers, they are at the average right now. But they're not ever going to, I think, top to bottom hit for a ton of power. So they need to get on base, right? I think on base for them will be pretty important, and they're not particularly good at getting on base right now. 20th in the league in on base percentage. So when you go to the deadline for the Royals, I mean, it'd be nice if they could bring in another power hitter. I just don't think that's going to happen. Like, if I'm Piccolo, I'm looking to continue, like, okay, can this guy run a little? That would be handy. Can he get on base and can he run a little? That would be even better. They just have to have, I think, a ton of table setters in the lineup. And again, I don't think that that's any different than the greatest Royals teams of the last 30 years, 40 years. And that's sort of what they did, right? Those guys were scrappy at the plate. They never struck out, right? Those guys never struck out in that last recent little mini dynasty they had. They got on base. They stole bases. They were aggressive. They were timely. But it wasn't, they had, you look at those lineups, how many great hitters were in those lineups? Lorenzo Cain at that time was a great hitter, right? Moustakas and Hosmer were pretty good hitters.
Perez.
Ben Zobrist, but Perez at that point wasn't yet a great hitter like he is now. I think he was good, especially at the catcher position, but he's not what he is now. I mean, those lineups were consistent, if nothing else. Like, it didn't feel like there was a hole in that lineup outside of, second base for a little while. But they were all doing little things to set up the big guys to be really productive in the key moments. I don't think that this team's going to have an opportunity to be much different than that. I think they're always going to have to do that this year. And that's why I'm so optimistic that at the deadline, I think they can achieve that. Like they're not going to go find Juan Soto at the deadline. That's not going to happen for them. Can they go find guys that can run a little bit and can just get on base, can be disruptive? That's what they need. They need a disruptive offense that sets up, the top of the lineup to do its damage, I think. So what does that mean in the overall averages? I mean, they're kind of league average right now, but it doesn't feel like that's enough. So I would say above average. I mean, they're going to need to be above average.
I think that the Royals would absolutely take a look at a power bat, especially if it's an outfielder at the trade deadline.
I just don't think they'll be there, though.
I don't think there are players that way. I don't think there's going to be an influx of them available at the trade deadline. Like, you look at potential trade targets for any team in Major League Baseball, it sure seems like there is quite a bit of first basemen that are probably going to be available, and the Royals don't need a first baseman. Look at, somebody like Paul Goldschmidt for the Cardinals has been rumored as a trade target. Josh Bell from the Marlins has been rumored as a trade target. Pete Alonso from the Mets, same thing. They're all first basemen. The Royals don't need a first baseman. They need outfielders.
But if you could get any of those guys, I would take a swing at. If Pete Alonso is really available, but
those guys are all going to be available. They're all going to be available. I just don't know if the Royals are going to be interested in, trying to, like, if there was a surefire, like, here's a name that I've seen out there potentially as a player that could be shopped to a contender, is Alex Bregman from the Astros. That's a name that has been rumored as being somebody that could potentially be on the move. That would be somebody I'd be potentially interested in, maybe the Royals looking at, just because of the position that he plays.
Can't stand that guy. Don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah, maybe. He would be handy. But I do think that that's not going to be their market. I don't know what kind of trade ammo they've actually got. Their farm system's not good. I don't see them making a big splash like that, because I don't know that they've got the ammo to get it. I think, though, that they will have a great opportunity to go find one or two of that next rung. What are some of the what is I'm trying to remember back to when they did a really good job at the deadline over the years, and they would bring in players that, okay, maybe, but really good fits for what they.
Well, it was the World Series year. I mean, it was Johnny Cueto and Ben Zobrist. I mean, that was really.
No, there were other guys, though, that they brought in. Those were the headline guys. That was the year they got super aggressive.
Yeah.
And then that offseason, they brought in a couple of guys, and you were like, okay. And those turned out to be Kendrys Morales. Remember, Kendrys Morales was a big key contributor.
Yeah.
But at the time, he was sort of on the back end. Like, I think that those kind of savvy veteran hitters will be there. Their problem is they kind of need him to play the outfield too, right? Like, between Salvi's need to catch a little relief and, Pasquantino can kind of, you're sort of log jammed at a big old veteran bat to just plug in at DH. So you're going to need to find somebody that can also play the outfield. I don't think it's going to be a big name. Don't think it has to be, but they need it, because when they're going to go into these series are so fun because you can project Seattle out to be a playoff team. Okay. Let's say this is the team that you play in the second round of the playoffs, and you went the distance in your opening round series, and you can't start the series with Lugo and Reagans. You can't. So you got to start it with Singer. You got to start it with Alec Marsh, maybe, or Waka, or whatever it is. Can you get through? And Seattle's rested. Can you scratch and claw with those guys to get back to your races? That's what we'll have to see in this series. Can they generate enough to disrupt some of the really good starting pitching when you can't pencil in that your own starter is going to give you 6 innings and allow no more than a couple of runs?
Well, look, I'll go back to the series finale against the Angels on Sunday. I saw the lineup when it came out, and it was a day off for Salvi. And they had Freddie Fermin catching. Of course, Pasquantino was playing first base, but they had Seth Lugo on the bump. And so the Royals felt comfortable resting Salvi when you've got Seth Lugo taking the hill. They know that you don't need that big bat in the lineup all the time when you've got somebody pitching the way that Seth Lugo is pitching. It's different when basically anybody else. And I would even include Cole Reagans in that, to an extent, because Reagans has been up and down. When he's been good, he's been really good. And when he hasn't been good, he's kind of gotten lit up. So I think that really everybody else outside of Lugo, you've got to have your full arsenal in the lineup night in and night out, which means Salvi's probably not going to get the days off that he could probably use, things like that. And so it all kind of plays in together. And especially if you're talking about, let's say it's a potential playoff series against a team like Seattle, and you mentioned they're well rested. When you don't have your full complement and your lineup, is pretty top heavy for the most part, then at that point, everything, it's kind of a domino effect, and you end up not being able to be as well rested as the other team when you get into those high pressure games.
For sure. And it will be more important for them to rest Salvi than worry about, one game on May 13th. It just will be. And they'll do that. I don't think I'm just like, it's becoming pretty clear that Quatraro does not have the horses he needs offensively. I think we've seen enough, right? I think we've seen enough. I think we've seen enough with the starting rotation to know it has staying power. I think we've seen enough with the bullpen to know it's at least better than it was. Can it use another arm? Every bullpen in baseball can always use another arm. I also think we've seen enough in the offense to say, I don't think this is enough. And these are good problems to have. These are what winning baseball teams look at in May, in the middle of May. We overanalyze a game, a series opener on the road in Seattle, and really try to think about, okay, well, how does that look later? And so when you look at the offense, you can look at it and say, yeah, that ain't going to be enough. You cannot have an outfield going into the postseason of Velasquez, Melendez, and Blanco. I'm intrigued by Blanco. Isbell will have something to say, but there's just not enough juice in that combination. They're not getting enough out of Frazier and Renfroe. They're not getting enough out of who they brought in. So they're going to have to go try again. And there will be plenty of non-headline screaming bats available. Because again, I would love for them to go get a big bat. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. So what else is out there, right? Yeah. What else can just make you better?
I can always think back to, because of course I'm a Braves fan, I can think back to 2021 when they won the World Series. They lost Ronald Acuna for the year. They went out at the trade deadline. They acquired 4 outfielders that helped them win a World Series. One of them was Jorge Soler from the Royals, but they also got Adam Duvall. They got Jock Peterson. They got Eddie Rosario. Those 4 guys helped lead them to a World Series. I'm not saying that the Royals are going to go out there and trade for 4 outfielders, but if they're serious enough and they feel like they have the pieces to be able to be a postseason team and make a run, then, I do think that there is that scenario where they can go out and they can try to acquire that. Again, I don't know exactly the way that their farm system stacks up. I know it hasn't been good as of late, but I do think that if they feel like they need to be all in this year, and maybe they don't, this could very well be like the 2014 Royals team where they went to a World Series, they lost, they stood pat, and they felt like they still had the pieces to be able to do it the next year. And then they were more aggressive the year after that. And then they won the championship that year. That could be this year's team. I don't know. But what I do know is that if they feel like they can make a run at it, then they can certainly be aggressive at the trade deadline and improve that lineup basically overnight.
It's a really interesting comparison, and I love it. I think they'll be somewhere in between. In 2014, that's right when I got here, right? And I love, let's hold this for the break. Comparing those 2 seasons to this one and how the Royals may approach it, because I think it's fascinating. 869-1240 Royals fans, you can chime in on the IHOP hotline. We'll have some giveaways today. We'll give away a little HTO, so stay tuned for your opportunity for that. Keep it here. More Sports Daily. We're going to come back and we're going to talk more about this. The deadline. We're already thinking about it. It's May 13th. That's what good baseball grants you. We'll continue to do it next on Sports Daily.
Sometimes people tell us, I don't get it. It's just tea. But let me tell you, we are so much more than just tea. With more than 25 flavors, the possibilities are endless. Come on in and try them all for free to find your favorite or get us on the go for your busy lifestyle. And don't miss happy hour every day for half-price cups of tea. So the next time someone tells you it's just tea, tell them to come by and find out why we say drink tea, be happy. We have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free.
Welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here. This portion of the program brought to you by Crestview Country Club. Always appreciate our friends at Crestview and their support of the show. I'll tell you, Tommy, I don't know if you guys are yet. We got signed up for the big Memorial Day pool party.
Oh, you
so
did?
Every year there's big Memorial Day pool party. We are trying to figure things out. May is absolutely May and June are insanity on the old family calendar. Like absolutely crazy nuts insane. And so it's like, okay, what are we doing here? And it was like, oh, we got that pool party. So what they do is they'll have like a soft opening of the pool. And I've told you this before. We use that pool more than anything else at Crestview with our kids. So they soft open that pool for a few days, and then it all leads up into their big Memorial Day bash. They'll have DJs and all kinds of stuff. And, I'll act a fool doing all the competitions I probably shouldn't be doing at my age, but it's okay.
You do the deal where they throw the little bottles of
yes,
liquor into the pool, and then you dive
absolutely.
in and you try to get them.
And I do. And then I don't tell anybody this because it's sort of my secret. I recruit some other people to help me.
Okay.
And like work out deals. I am not the best swimmer. And by not the best swimmer, I mean, I can get from point A to point B. Like I can tread water, but I can't get there in the proper ways. So when there are things like that, like I'm toast, right? Like I took swim lessons for like 7 years growing up. I cannot in my brain lose the mental block of not holding my nose when I go underwater. Can't do it. Jump off the diving board, any of it. So I've never really been able to properly swim, dive, do all that stuff because I have to hold my nose. I don't know why. Don't ask me. Whatever. I just hold my nose. And so I recruit a little help. I cut some deals, right? Like here's how we're going to play this. Like you do this and I'm going to get you this and we'll do this. I have a strategy to that.
My wife and I have a tradition with the parties at Crestview because, okay, so the Memorial Day party coming up in a couple of weeks, they do a 4th of July one, they do a Labor Day one. There are 3 main, kind of like opening, middle, and close of the summer. And, so we've been members out there for a long time. And our fun tradition is that typically on those holidays, I will go and play golf in the morning. I will tell my wife I will meet her at the pool when the golf round is done for the party. And inevitably, I am always about 2 hours late. She always gets mad at me. And then we end the day. And it happens that way every single time. It doesn't matter what time I tell her I'm going to be there. I'm always late. She's always upset with me. And that's just the way our holidays go.
I've not done that. Usually for us, it's because like those mornings are chaotic to get everything done for the stores to afford the ability for to be able to go sit at the pool all day. So I can't be like, hey, I'm out. I'll see you I'll see you in 4 hours at the pool. What I need is my kids to get just a tiny bit older. So I'll just drag them with me and be like, do whatever you want. We're going to play golf. I want to will it into the universe for my kids to play golf. Another great thing about Crestview is they have the lessons and the camps in the summertime, of which we have to get them re-signed up. So we appreciate Crestview. Give them a call today. Check out all the stuff they have going. There's all kinds of memberships. You can get a membership that requires no golf and only is focused on the pool and the kids stuff. They have those. So give them a call if that's something that interests you if you're not a golfer. All right, Tommy, before the break, you brought this up, and I love this particular conversation, I suppose. Looking back to the Royals in their recent good years, and it's 2014 and 15. It's really also kind of 16 and 17. So the Royals have had interesting strategies at the trade deadline. In 14, that was the first year I got here in June of 2014. From the outside, I was already sort of on the Royals. I keep up with prospects. I play fantasy baseball. I really enjoy that part of baseball. And so I'm like, man, I love what the Royals have in the system and all this stuff. I loved a lot of the young players that they had already called up. So I get here and immediately feel the heat. And as we got into July and they weren't doing anything, then I really felt the heat. I didn't agree with the masses. I was like, guys, I think they're good enough to make the playoffs the way they're constructed. And they just have too many good young players. And they were like, you're nuts. Like, we don't get this opportunity. They need to be aggressive. We're going to burn that mother down if they don't go make a trade. They did not. And people were furious. Turns out the Royals were correct. The players were good enough to get them there. And they barely got there, but they got there, right? And then the rest is history. So then you go into the next season. Now things are a little bit different, right? Now you feel like, man, we got to the World Series. Like we feel like we can win a championship. And then so in 15, you go make splash moves. You go get Cueto and Zobrist after an aggressive offseason. And it leads to a World Series. They win a World Series. 16 comes around, and you feel like the window is still open. And it turns out 16 and 17, and I totally understand where the Royals came from. They were trying to extend this, but it should not have been, right? Retrospectively looking back, they weren't good enough. And so then they should have sold when they were. So all of those years, that 4-year stretch is pretty fascinating to me. I think this team and this year probably needs to fall somewhere in between 14 and 15. I don't think they need to do nothing. I don't think the same circumstances are there. I don't think they have the farm system to do that. And there are two other factors. A, you have one of the best players on the planet, right? They couldn't ever say that. They didn't have Bobby Witt. As much as we loved all those players, they didn't have Bobby Witt Jr. on those teams. And B, Salvador Perez is in an offensive prime right now that could end at 34 years old at any point. So you have those two factors. You've also spent a whole bunch of money on these free agent pitchers. They had not done that in 2014. So you've spent a ton of money this offseason that you need to capitalize on. But is it 2015? I would say no, because in 2015, they had some pieces to go out and acquire those two headliners. They don't have that anymore. So how do you land somewhere in between 14 and 15? I think the reality is you're as aggressive as you can reasonably be. Like you could, if people don't want your players, then you can't really trade your players. So you try at the deadline to be as aggressive as you can be. But the real key in reality, and nobody wants to hear this right now, but the real key in reality is the opportunity will come in the offseason again when all it costs you is money to get players. Because then it doesn't matter what your farm system looks like. Now it just costs you money. Can they spend money again 2 off seasons in a row? I don't know that. But I think that becomes an easier path. I think they're going to be challenged at the deadline to be I think they want to be super aggressive. I don't think it will be because of a lack of desire. I think they just don't have what it will take to get the best players at the deadline. Therefore, you're going to have to make really savvy and smart, smaller moves.
Well, I think also if you compare the rosters from 2014 to this year, I think that offensively, it's probably comparable. It's about the same. In fact, I would say that this year there's more power in the lineup than there was back in 2014. I mean, if you go back and look at that roster in 2014, Alex Gordon led the team in home runs. He had 19 overall. That was the leader in home runs with 19. Salvi had 17. Mike Moustakas had 15. Nobody else was in double digits. Eric Hosmer only had 9. Billy Butler had 9. Omar Infante had 6. Like there wasn't a ton of power. There was only one player that was a full-time player on that team that hit over 300, and that was Lorenzo Cain at 301. Also, I would suggest that the pitching this year overall a whole is better than what it was in 2014. James Shields.
Not the bullpen.
The starting pitching. James Shields, Jeremy Guthrie, Jason Vargas, Yordano Ventura, and Danny Duffy. Okay, they had a full rotation, and then Bruce Chin also started a handful of games, but they had a full rotation. But really, ERA-wise, I mean, they finished the year, you had a couple guys in the 3s. Jeremy Guthrie was in the low 4s. It was a good rotation, but they didn't, I mean, I guess maybe you could say James Shields was, quote unquote, the ace of that rotation. He wasn't pitching like Seth Lugo is right now, and no. I don't know if there ended
up being Yordano Ventura.
Yeah, I don't know if there was a pitcher. I mean, maybe Ventura with the upside of Cole Reagans or Brady Singer. Ace, so I think that comparatively speaking, you've got some similarities. What I think is really interesting, and I didn't realize this about the 2014 season, they started off the year, the first 29 games of the regular season, when they won. So they were 14 and 15 through the first 29 games. In their 14 wins, in all of them, they scored at least 4 runs. In all of their 15 losses, they scored 3 runs or fewer. So that was the way that they started the season with the losing record. They didn't have, I guess, to start off the year, the sharp pitching to be able to overcome a lack of offense like we see this Royals team being able to do right now. They've been able to score 2 or 3 runs and get wins this season when the starting pitching has looked really good. That's a difference from 10 years ago if you were going to compare these two teams, because they just didn't have the pitching prowess to be able to overcome a lack of offense. They lost all of their first 15 games when they scored 3 runs or fewer 10 years ago. So that is an advantage for 2024, and it's something they're going to have to keep, rolling with.
Yeah, that was an interesting team, and I do think that lineup, top to bottom, was better than this lineup, top to bottom. Now, they didn't have anybody as good as Bobby Witt Jr. in that lineup. They didn't have anybody as good as the current Salvador Perez in that lineup. They probably had a handful of guys that were, probably Vinny Pasquantino or better. They were deeper for sure. Right now, there is a gaping black hole in the Royals lineup. Like you get through the top of it, and it's just like, okay. I think it will be so easy for this team to improve on that. The other thing to consider, and 2014 comes to mind, and 2015 on this, is when you play at Kauffman, when you're going to lean in your starting pitching, you have to play good defense. You have to really play good defense in the outfield. Don't forget who was roaming the outfield for those Royals teams. They were incredible in center and left field every year, and pretty good in right field. But with Locane and Gordon, like, their defense in the outfield won them games. And so that's another factor to consider too. Like, that's something that you kind of want to see out of this lineup. I mean, to me, it's left and right field. I think you play good defense in center field, and you've got to find some production out of left and right field, out of those corner spots. And again, just getting better than what they are now seems very, very, very attainable, even with their limited resources at the deadline. They're not going to have the bullpen they had in those years. You just won't. Those were some of the best bullpens we've ever seen. And so what can be the difference? I think their starting pitching is certainly better at the top, and maybe it's as deep. The lineup is better at the top, not as good at the bottom.
It's definitely more of a top-heavy both lineup and rotation this year.
Correct, which is important, I think. I don't know that they'll run quite the way those teams ran. I mean, they will with Bobby Witt Jr., but basically everybody could run or tried to run on those teams. And I do think that's something to tap into. I'm trying to watch, Tommy, if there is a correlation now between stealing bases and being a good team. Like, are the teams that are leading the league in stolen bases, is that correlating very simply to wins? I think it is, to a degree. I think it is. So that's also something to consider. Maybe you don't find a power bat, but again, can you just find somebody with speed that can get on base and really just continue to set the table for the rest of this lineup? And then can you move Michael Garcia down in the lineup? So maybe you're top heavy. You go Witt, Pasquantino, Perez, and then you sort of reset things a little bit with a couple more table setters, and you throw Michael Garcia down in the 6 or 7 hole to let him try to drive these guys in. I think there's a lot of ways they can do it. They just need to do something. Jesse points out on our video stream, which you can find, by the way, on Facebook and YouTube and X, that in 14-15, they had a lights-out bullpen that would basically shut teams out in the 7th, 8th, and 9th. Absolutely. They're not replicating that. Not that they can't try, but again, that would be like saying, well, if they just had the late 90s Yankees bullpen, they'd be in good shape. Like, that ain't happening. Like, those are two of the best bullpens we've ever seen. And the Royals had it. They had it. I mean, those bullpens were incredible. That's not coming, but they're good. They're much better than they were last year, and I think they have enough in the pen to be fine.
So let's say,
they'll try
I think
to
it brings up a good question. Let's say that they only have enough ammo in their farm system or prospects or whatever to do one or the other, to add another bullpen arm or to add a power hitting outfielder. Who do you go after?
Hitting outfielder?
Or at least an improvement in, offensive prowess than what they have right now.
Let's generalize it more to a player that improves the offense or a player that improves the bullpen.
Yeah.
I would say, as of now, the offense looks like a greater need. Not simply for the reason that the bullpen has been much better, because it has, but because two guys we talked about yesterday, Bubich, Lynch, they have some guys that should be in the big leagues but don't have a spot in the rotation that they may be able to bolster the bullpen with. And so I think some of that's going to happen internally. I think some of that naturally will take care of itself. I don't think there is any internal or natural improvement coming for the lineup. So I would say it's a bigger priority to go outside to find some juice in the offense, because I don't think it's there internally. I think there's some improvement coming for the bullpen internally, as these other young starters who don't have a spot in the rotation may be able to try again as bullpen guys. And we see that all the time across Major League Baseball. It's sort of the reverse Seth Lugo. What has happened with Lugo is not the norm, right? To be a bullpen guy forever and become a great starter, it's far more likely to be a guy that couldn't figure it out in the rotation that gets to cut it loose in the bullpen and actually becomes pretty effective. I think that could be the case for some of these Royals starters highly drafted that have not panned out. I do think it would be interesting to see some of those guys in the bullpen. We'll just put it that way. What do you think, Royals fans? You can chime in, 869-1240. Plenty more to come. We'll switch away from the Royals briefly when we return. Are you watching these NBA playoffs? What do we think of Mavs, Thunder, at least the Western Conference? We can get into that. Always a little room for football talk. Justin Fields apparently doesn't like his old veteran quarterback teammate. Not good, because, well, he's going to have another one that he's got to get along with. We'll get into that story as well. It's Sports Daily. It's a Tuesday. Albracht and Castor, Jad Chambers producing. Don't go away.
Sometimes people tell us, I don't get it, it's just tea. But let me tell you, we are so much more than just tea. With more than 25 flavors, the possibilities are endless. Come on in and try them all for free to find your favorite, or get us on the go for your busy lifestyle. And don't miss happy hour every day for half-price cups of tea. So the next time someone tells you it's just tea, tell them to come by and find out why we say, drink tea, be happy. We have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here. Glad to be here with you on this Tuesday edition. Royals baseball, we've been talking a lot about. It's on KFH, available for free on the Odyssey app. Tune in to KFH tonight. Royals Mariners, 8:30. Simply download the Odyssey app and search for KFH. Thanks to everybody watching us on our video stream. Trying to beef that up here in the last couple of weeks, so hope everybody's enjoying that, finding it. Share it. Look, if you're watching us on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, wherever it is, if you don't mind, share that stream. Let other folks find it and watch it as well. Trying to grow the show here. Appreciate everybody for doing that.
You know, I feel like to jump in real quick.
However
Yeah,
it is.
I know you've got a background in TV, and you know, so the production quality, the value, the production
really
value. Feel like it's. I think you need to probably have a conversation with your TV folks about having this, you know, be on television every day.
Stream it. That it's not actually an insane idea, and I know you're being a little tongue in cheek. It's not a crazy idea. It is an interesting idea and one that I've thought a lot about. There are some platforms, if there's any crossover synergy, I'm not sure, because of the connectivity now of the digital space.
Yeah.
We have an entire digital platform there, and maybe there is. I'm not sure, but it's interesting. But, you know, you get back into your world, and how do you share the pie?
Right.
I'm out at that point. I don't know how that works. Like that's not,
Hey,
you know, I don't know.
You get us a seat at the table. I'll figure out how to slice that pie.
I get you a seat at the table this afternoon. That part's easy. It's what's interesting about our video stream is Tommy and I have a lot going on in life outside of this show. So you can't hear the chaos sometimes of things, but you can always see it. And there's nothing we can do about that. So whenever, you know, this was, God, when you first came on board, Tommy, like you brought up the idea of the video stream, and it had been brought up before, but that was never going to happen, you know, in the old days. It was like, now we're not doing that. And I'm like, yeah, I think it could be okay, but I do have some concern, like, of what's happening sometimes behind the scenes. Maybe, you know, a kid walks up and is like asking me if he can have candy, and I'm trying to like tell him no. And now he knows now, like audio cues, like he knows when we're on a break and everything. There's all of that happening, and then all the other chaos that might be happening behind the scenes. And I'm like, we're going to give people a good opportunity. And initially when we set this up, on the video stream, it was just to see our own cues,
Right.
right? It was only at that point, because we're not sitting in the same room most of the time. It was only for the visual cues to be able to go back and forth. And I'm like, okay, well then Tommy's found this really cool software that makes it look pretty. And it's like, okay, all right. And it's grown, and now I love it. I love the video stream. I love the interactivity more than anything of the video stream. So we're trying to beef it up. We're going. So if you're watching us, if you do watch us that way, share it with your friends if you don't mind. We would appreciate that. And, of course, everyone listening out there on KFH, you'll just have to wonder what we're doing each and every day behind the scenes here. Or you can watch. You can go back and watch them, too, by the way. You can always – it always sort of just like lives. The video stream does. So if you follow KFH on any of those platforms, you can go back and pick up anything out of the video stream. All right. Hour number 2 coming up. We'll talk a little football, maybe a little basketball. We can always jump back to the Royals if you would like on the IHOP hotline at 869-1240. Let's give some tea away on the way out of this first hour. One free tea, iced tea, HTO. You can get your hands on that, which works at either Wichita location or in Derby. Or, well, and I should say, you can get a free reign coffee card, which is good. Same locations, East and Derby, on the coffee, iced, hot, anything you want. First caller to the IHOP hotline gets those 2 prizes today. We'll come back. Hour number 2 of Sports Daily. Come right up.
Sometimes people tell us, I don't get it, it's just tea. But let me tell you, we are so much more than just tea. With more than 25 flavors, the possibilities are endless. Come on in and try them all for free to find your favorite, or get us on the go for your busy lifestyle. And don't miss happy hour every day for half-price cups of tea. So the next time someone tells you it's just tea, tell them to come by and find out why we say, drink tea, be happy. We have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free. We have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free.
This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor alongside you. Glad to be here with you. Shannon wins our HTO. Congratulations to Shannon. Tommy, there are news here on the schedule, and I just saw this. I missed this earlier. The Chiefs, we get another schedule nugget, and it's another good one. And in week 2, Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes will square back off. So, thought maybe that could be an opening week game. You don't get it. How about Ravens-Bengals to open the 2024 season for the Kansas City Chiefs? That is that's juicy. That is pretty. That's pretty. Wait, is that a road or a home game? I can't remember.
I don't know. I don't have that pulled up.
I think the Bengals were at home. I'm pretty sure it's a home game. Yeah. So the Chiefs at least get to open them both up at home.
Yeah.
We knew they would play those games at home. So it's the late afternoon window on CBS there for week 2. But you get maybe the 2 most marquee games on the schedule for the Chiefs, potentially right out of the gates in the opening 2 weeks. That's pretty good stuff. I don't know how much people like that in general terms. I love it. I think it's awesome. And I think it'll be obviously a great test for the Chiefs. But if you hope that Burrow is able to go and is healthy and you get the full scope of that matchup. But man, that is, whoo boy. It's going to be a good couple of weeks there for football watching.
Yeah, you don't get to ease into the regular season at all if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. But I like that. I like the fact that they get to, kick off the season by. I mean, come on,
they're the 2-time champions. Yeah, they don't care.
You're getting a pretty solid test in week 1 and week 2, back-to-back games. At least they're both in Arrowhead, which will be great. It's fun to think about Lamar and the Ravens coming to Kansas City after the Chiefs went to Baltimore and beat them in the AFC Championship game last year. So that'll be fun. And then, of course, bringing Joe Burrow and the Bengals back to Kansas City, back to quote-unquote Burrowhead. Looking forward to that rematch happening again in week number 2. So, yeah, all in all, I love the fact that this is the opening 2 games for Kansas City because you get a chance to be tested right out of the gate and you know exactly where this team is after 2 weeks.
I think we know exactly where they are anyway, right? I think. So that what I like about this, it would be different if they weren't the 2-time champions trying to go for a third. I don't think it matters as much now as it would, let's say, if this was 3 years ago. I just don't, who cares, right? If you're the Chiefs this year, who cares? They know the target's on their back. They're wearing the mantle of bad guy this year. They're sort of changing their mentality anyway. Who cares? You're the 2-time champion.
Yeah, bring it on.
You roll out of the gates and you just roll with it.
Bring it on.
Rick brings out on our YouTube stream that he doesn't like 2 home games to start when they'd have to play the 9 of the last 15 on the road. I don't think, Rick, that I'm tremendously worried about that because we know who they're playing and where they're playing. So the flip side of that is, would you not rather know that you'll have the most rest you'll have in preparation time all season for the Ravens, and then you don't have to follow and you get the Bengals and you don't ever have to travel before you get them. You know what I mean? Like there's advantages. Like 9 and 15 on the road is fine, but what if, you get a bunch of games together where it's like Raiders, like, you know what I mean? Am I making sense? I think it's all relative. Like, you can easily make the case that when it's those two home games, basically with as much preparation time as you'll have all year, that's as much of an advantage as it is anytime. Those games count just as much in September as if they played it in October or if they played it in December. It doesn't matter. So getting those two opponents in an advantageous time as far as rest and preparation and health, I do think there are some advantages to that just the same.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I know that when you get late into the season, you obviously would love to have as many home games as possible. But I do think that going back to what you had mentioned, as far as the mentality of Kansas City going into this season, two-time champs, you're kind of embracing the villain role. I think that will continue this year. You've got that dynasty that you're building. It's kind of like, who cares, you know? And I think that that's the mentality that the players are going to have going into this season. Who cares? We'll play anybody, anywhere, at any time. Doesn't necessarily matter. And now I think that deep down, you know, if anybody was being honest, yeah, you'd love to have more home games down the stretch, especially as you're jockeying for playoff position and maybe a bye, because there is something to be said for home field advantage. But if this team is truly good enough to win a third Super Bowl in a row and truly good enough to be an elite dynasty, the best of the best, then you can kind of take that home field advantage and kick it to the curb. It shouldn't really matter. So I think that publicly you're going to hear, you know, nobody have any issues with the fact that they're going to be having to go on the road for the majority of their games down the stretch.
Yeah. It's it just doesn't matter. It matters for some teams. I'm not saying it doesn't matter in general. It does. It doesn't matter for the Chiefs. That who cares? When you're the two-time champion and the target is on your back, you play anybody, anytime, anywhere. Who cares? And they're not, you know, and the NFL is, the margins are so razor thin. But again, they're much thinner for other teams than they are for the Chiefs. You don't worry about that stuff. The only thing that is on the Chiefs' mind this year, one thing, there is only one thing that matters, and that is winning that third Super Bowl. They don't need to worry about anything else other than putting themselves in the best position to do that. And again, I know that sounds like cliche night, but it's not the case for every team, right? Every team does not have that as a reality staring them in the face. You take the, I don't know, what a good example of this would be. The Bears, right? Yeah, the Bears would probably like to play their tough opponents later in the year so that Caleb Williams has more time to prepare and learn as an NFL quarterback. It will be better for them to open with an easy schedule. It might be better for the Bengals to open with an easy schedule to ease Joe Burrow back into things, right? They're not going to get that because they get the Chiefs in week 2. But for the Chiefs, when they don't have any real questions lingering outside of how many games will Rashee Rice miss, you just take, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It really doesn't matter. And if you're looking at a competitive standpoint, yeah, I would like to play Lamar Jackson when I can be the most prepared I am for any game all season long. And then if I'm going to have to play Joe Burrow, I'd love to play him knowing that it's on a long week. Because remember, they play that opener against the Ravens on a Thursday, Tommy. So now you get the most time you'll have to prepare for any team all year long. You get the defending MVP in an AFC Championship rematch. Then the very next week, on a long week, a Thursday to a Sunday, you get what might end up being the second most difficult game on your schedule against the Bengals. At least in the conversation for it, I actually think this is advantageous for the Chiefs. I think if you're the Chiefs, you look at this and you're like, hell yeah. Like, we get more time to prepare. We know on our long preparation weeks, we play 2 of our hardest games this year. And, by the way, you get Burrow early in the season while he's still trying to come back from a serious injury. This couldn't be any better for the Chiefs, quite frankly. You know, maybe you don't want to follow up these 2 games with Buffalo and San Francisco and Pittsburgh and do it that way. But again, it's not going to happen. But I like this. I think this is good for the Chiefs. I don't think it's bad for them at all. I think it's irrelevant more than anything. But if you're going to take a side, I think it's a good side if you're the Chiefs and you look at this that way.
Yeah, I certainly think that when you are at first glance looking at, okay, you kick off the season with the Ravens and then you follow it up with the Bengals. Okay, so those are two teams that I think, assuming that Joe Burrow is coming back at full strength right away, those are two teams that conceivably are going to be in the hunt to compete with Kansas City to win an AFC championship this year. As well they should. I mean, of course, the Ravens were right there knocking on the doorstep, and I think they were the team that everybody thought would get there last season. Of course, I thought it would be the Ravens and the Niners, and the Chiefs were able to win that AFC championship game. The Bengals have a ton of talent, obviously, but Joe Burrow went down last year with the injury. So these are two teams that are looking at, continuing to climb that mountain, dethrone the defending two-time champs. And so in my mind, there's nothing better than to kick off your season with both of them. Slay both of those dragons out of the way right when you kick off the season. And I think for both the Ravens and the Bengals, if I'm fans of either one of those teams, I'm thinking, okay, like we get a shot at the champs right away. We'll know exactly who we are when we play them from day one. And I know that it's up in the air about how effective Joe Burrow will be coming back from his injuries, but still, like, you get a shot at the king right off the bat. And I love that. I love that. I love it for the Chiefs, but I also love it for the Ravens and the Bengals too. If they've got their sights set on dethroning Kansas City, and that more than likely you're probably going to face them again in the postseason. As we've said multiple times before, a team in week 1 is completely different than a team in week 17. So having them at the very beginning of the year, you get a shot at them right away, knowing that more than likely you'll be able to face them again in the postseason.
Right. And again, when you're the Chiefs and when you're the Bengals too, when you're the Joe Burrow Bengals anyway, like you're not none of this matters. It does in the 1 or 2 game swing that could mean you play home games in the playoffs or road games in the playoffs. But once you reach a certain point in the NFL, it doesn't or shouldn't matter whether you're home or road. Remember the Chiefs last year, right?
Yeah.
Who cares where they play their playoff games? They're equipped to win in
Remember,
the playoffs.
everybody was
Doesn't
freaked
matter.
out, and I was one of them, freaked out about you don't get an AFC championship home game, where it had basically been the Arrowhead Invitational for the last half decade. It wasn't going to be that way last year. And it was like, oh, they're not going to play at home. And, what's going to happen? And, they were able to get it done.
Everybody remember Burrowhead?
Yeah.
Right? That's a thing. It's a thing for a reason. When you reach a certain level, like when you're in that upper tier in the NFL, you're really just sort of trying to get there healthy. That's it. And how many teams are you going to say that about? Obviously, you would say it about the Chiefs. You'd say it about the Ravens. You would say it about the Bengals. I think you could still say it about the Bills. You're going to say it about the 49ers next year, certainly. And that may be it. I mean, that may be the elite list that we would foresee with the highest chance to get there. Those teams don't care. They just want to be healthy in the postseason. They'd like to play them at home. You'd like to play all your games at home, sure. But your expectation doesn't change if you open up the postseason on the road. And the reality is, if you're that good, is it an advantage? Sure it is. Vegas tells us it is. Home field matters, but it doesn't mean everything. And so some of these teams, like, you just don't worry about it. I don't think the only thing from the Bengals standpoint that sucks is you have to play the Chiefs when you're not 100% sure about Joe Burrow, and you have to play the Chiefs when they get long rest. Like that part, that sucks for the Bengals, right? You don't want to play the Chiefs when they've got 10 days to prepare for you. And when you're trying to inch and very slowly bring Joe Burrow back into the fold, you don't want to do that. But in general terms, these teams are good enough and the expectations are high enough that they shouldn't care who they play, when they play, where they play, any of it.
Bring it on.
Short rest, I don't care, because your expectation is to win a Super Bowl. You're not, we're not in, it's not like the margins are so thin, you're just trying to scratch by and have a better record than you were the year before. If any of those teams, Ravens, Bengals, Chiefs, Bills, again, I think 49ers, if any of those teams don't win the Super Bowl, no matter what else they do this year, that will be a disappointed fan base. How many teams are like that in the NFL? I think fewer than you would say. I think it would be cliche to say, well, every team thinks they should win the Super Bowl. Of course they do. How many teams really can? And maybe more importantly, how many fan bases really believe that that's the expectation? There are a lot of Lions fans right now. Does the fan base really look like it's going to be Super Bowl or bust? I would be surprised if that was the
I mean, the
case.
amount of money
Maybe
that they paid Jared
they're
Goff
getting
yesterday would
closer.
tell you
Yeah.
that
They're getting
they do
closer.
feel that way.
They feel that way as an organization. I'm talking about, though, the reality of the perception among the fans. They're getting close enough that maybe they deserve to be in this conversation also. Maybe you could put, I mean, you put the Cowboys in there, but we all know that's a silly thing to do. I'm just saying, like, I don't even know how we got on this. Like, the reality among fans, I think most places is, yeah, you are worried about all these tiny little details because your expectation is that you hope your team has a chance. You hope your team can make noise. So yes, like when you play teams, you're really locked into, okay, when that schedule release comes out, here's how I can see this play out, right? Here's how I can see. But for that handful of teams that legitimately feel like it's Super Bowl or bust, and that's a realistic expectation, none of this stuff that's going to happen over the next 24 hours with schedule releases and all that, I guess it's 48 hours, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The Chiefs get an early win. They get long rest for the Ravens and the Bengals. They'll have to eat that later when they have to travel 2 weeks in a row. I think they would take this 10 times out of 10. And in fact, I think if you're the Chiefs and you could cherry pick how you'd like this to go, opening this way would be a good way to do it. You get long rest for two of the most difficult teams on the schedule. That couldn't have gone any better for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I get it. And look, I think that the bottom line is that as you've got this team that they're putting the pieces together, and it's been very clear in the way that they've approached this offseason, despite all the issues that we all know exist and what's going to happen at wide receiver. And, they lost a couple of key pieces defensively. They locked up Chris Jones. They locked up Travis Kelce. They locked up Andy Reid. They've got all the pieces that they feel like they need to get that third title in a row. That's the focus. That's the mentality. We've got this dynasty that we're wanting to have all the pieces come together and make it happen. So, I've said it in this segment. You've said it in this segment. Anybody, anytime, anywhere. That's the mentality of it. So if that means Ravens and Bengals to start off the season, fantastic. If that means that you have to go on the road 9 of the last 15 weeks, so be it. If that means you've got weeks on short rest, yeah, you might be battling some injuries midway through the season. It is what it is. You go out there and you take care of business. I think the way that this offseason has gone, and even I would go back further, the way that the regular season went last year for Kansas City and all the turmoil and, just the questioning about whether or not this team was even good enough to make the playoffs, I think that tells you what you need to know about this team going into this season. It seems to me like it's a different intensity. It's a different mentality. You said embracing the villain role. That's part of it, but it's also just this, look, we're in a position now that we have to strike while the iron is hot. Let's go out there and take it. And let's go out there and get it. We're not going to leave anything to chance. We're going to make sure that we get this done. And I think that that's part of, everybody references the quote unquote Patriot way, over the last couple of decades, and teams have tried to emulate that ever since. This is probably the closest that anybody's ever gotten to it. That was part of it. Bill Belichick, do your job. Go out there and do your job. Anybody, anywhere, anytime, let's go out there and make it happen.
I cannot wait to see the transformation that I think is very clearly happening to the Chiefs playing this heel role that they've never been able to play. And I don't know that they can pull it off. I don't know that. I think Mahomes and Kelce can get it pulled off. Like they can do, and we're starting to see that, and they'll have fun with it, and I think they'll be able to do it. I don't know that Andy Reid's ever going to be a villain to anybody. I just don't know that that's going to happen. But I do think they will embrace this more this year by far than they ever have. And it'll be easy, right? Like the variables are all there. You're going for the three-peat. You're going for the thing that challenges all the other fan bases that thinks they've been the best. So you're going for that unattainable thing. You've got the Taylor Swift thing that you can lean into each and every week, right? There are people now. You've got the people that think the Chiefs get all the calls. You've got that crowd you can lean into a little bit. Like, they can do it. They could make themselves very easily transform into what the Patriots eventually became. I think the Patriots had an easier time doing it naturally because of Bill Belichick and everything. But I think we're going to see some of that this year. And man, you get to open up with this schedule and you get to go out and potentially, like, early in the season, lay that on, because the reality is the Chiefs only have things to gain. If they go 0-2, they're still going to be the Super Bowl favorite.
Yeah.
You know, unless as long as 15's under center, they're going to be the Super Bowl favorite, even if they open the season 0-2. Won't matter, right? They lost the opener last year. I think if last year taught you nothing else, Chiefs fans, it's that there's absolutely no reason to panic ever at anything as long as you get to the postseason with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Andy Reid healthy. Now, there are a lot of other things that we will need to watch and worry about this year. How does the defense look? Can the defense replicate even close to how good it was last year? If not, those are the things we'll watch, right? Those are the things we'll need to see work themselves out. But I cannot wait. I am so excited for that opening slate for the Chiefs. We are going to explode into this NFL season with that. That's wild stuff. All right. Here we go. Didn't see that earlier, so I'm glad we snuck that in. IHOP hotline, you can chime in 869-1240. When we come back, Bronny James stuff to talk about. I think I'm having a hard time with this story and how to process it. Maybe everyone out there can help. Maybe you can help me, Tommy. We'll get into that when we return on Sports Daily.
Sometimes people tell us, I don't get it, it's just tea. But let me tell you, we are so much more than just tea. With more than 25 flavors, the possibilities are endless. Come on in and try them all for free to find your favorite or get us on the go for your busy lifestyle. And don't miss happy hour every day for half-price cups of tea. So the next time someone tells you it's just tea, tell them to come by and find out why we say drink tea, be happy. have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free.
All right, welcome back, everybody, into Sports Daily. All right, Tommy. Bronny James is cleared to go to the draft. Okay, I don't think that's great news. It means he's healthy. He is healing. He is doing the things. We did not get a fair look at him in his lone college year. His metrics, I guess, and his measurements at this combine play fine. All the rumors are, I've seen a lot of different things. There are some reports that the Lakers are expected to take Bronny James. I know that might bother some people because his dad's LeBron, his dad's on the team. I think you have to look at it from a few different angles. Let's say the Lakers took Bronny James in the second round, right? Wouldn't you do that if you were the Lakers and it ensured you 1, 2, 3 more years of LeBron James at the production he's at right now, which is some of the best basketball he's ever played? If you knew that keeping LeBron required you to draft Bronny in the second round, I'm just going to tell everybody out there, like every team in basketball would do that. If you knew that getting Aaron Rodgers to the Jets meant you had to sign Randall Cobb, every team's going to do that needed a quarterback. I don't think any of this should surprise people. If the opportunity to play with his son extends the career of LeBron James at the clip he is still playing at, you should make that happen if you're the Lakers. I think they'd be crazy not to.
I mean, I think that's fine as long as everybody understands that Bronny James is not going to be an impact player for the Lakers. You know, they bring him
Probably
in.
not.
They bring him in the
Probably
second
not.
round. Okay, you partner him up with his dad. Okay, you know, you're trying to make LeBron happy to stay in LA so he doesn't go somewhere else. I get all
Or
of that.
just retire.
Or just retire. I understand all of that. But if anybody thinks that Bronny James is going to come in and improve the Lakers, they're wrong.
No.
You know, he played at USC last season and averaged under 5 points a game. That USC team was not good. There were multiple players on that roster that didn't, improve their draft stock at all. Also to the point to where their coach, Andy Enfield, left to go to SMU because that team was not good. Bronny James was not a good player on that team.
He couldn't play. I mean, he had a medical condition.
Well,
That's
for
what
sure.
makes it all hard.
But I mean, simply put, this is a play to make LeBron happy, and I understand it. As long as everybody knows exactly what it is and why they would do it in this way, then I think that that's fine. If they want to use a second-round draft pick as opposed to bringing in a better player that could help them down the road, okay, so be it. Like, that's the reason why. But don't kid yourself. He's not going to come in and all of a sudden be somebody that can help improve the Lakers.
But does anybody think that he would be? Does anybody think any second-round pick is going to do that, by the way?
I think that, as a second-round pick, I think the thought would be that player might have potential. They might have potential down the road to help the team. I don't think Bronny James does. I don't think that there is a scenario where he could actually be.
He played himself into a college prospect that looked like a possible pro player. I think that would be unfair to say. The medical condition clearly held him back last year. And so if you go back to the year before, like let's say Bronny we didn't have a college eligibility requirement. Could he have been drafted into the NBA? Obviously, if his name was not Bronny James, but he was a top 30 prospect according to everybody. I think he was fringe at worst. And so then then everything plays itself out at USC the way it does, which really sucks for Bronny James, by the way. And so now you get this opportunity, and like it doesn't bother me because you have to look at it in reality. The reality is your second round pick in the NBA is not that important. Now, does another team swoop in and put the pressure on the Lakers to draft him in the first? That will be fun to watch, actually. Does some team going to bait them in and be like, look, if you really want him, you got to trade us right now because we're going to take him. Like, we're going to take him.
I don't think that's going to happen.
That would be.
I don't think it's going to happen.
There will be teams that
because
there'll be teams that are going to say it's going to happen.
Oh,
They're going to. You better believe it.
Sure, like I think that there is that appeal, and in fact, Mike on our video stream says that he would take him if he was another team for a bargaining chip to bring in LeBron. I wouldn't do that because I think LeBron would just retire. I don't think that unless Bronny is going to the Lakers, LeBron stays with the Lakers and they play together. I don't think that there's really a likely scenario where another team takes Bronny for the shot that LeBron would sign with that team. I just don't think I think LeBron would say,
a free agent?
Yeah, I think I'm going to hang it up. After next season, I believe.
Yeah, but I think he's under contract. So it's not like he can just pick his team. He could put the pressure on. Yeah, he's got another year of his contract. That is an interesting thought. And it's another one. Like, again, I would tell you, if you're a team and you knew that you could have LeBron James play for you and not retire at the production level that we're still seeing out of him, which is flipping incredible, by the way. Now, as an executive, as a head coach selector and all these things, he's never been really any good at that. But as a player, he's still really dang good. And so, as a team that, wait, you're telling me I gotta just draft his son and he's gonna be there? Every team should be doing that, right? Because what's more valuable, that first round pick or LeBron James? Let me ask it to you that way.
LeBron James is, even at his advanced age, he absolutely is for a couple of years. But you're running that risk that LeBron just is like, nah, I'm good. And look,
but don't you think that
would
risk
you rather
is
actually
worthwhile?
draft? Well, I don't know. Would you rather actually have a legitimate first round draft pick or be stuck with Bronny James and LeBron doesn't sign with your team? And then you've basically given up that draft pick.
Let's look at last year's draft. Pick number whatever. At number 17 last year, Tommy, the Lakers drafted Jalen Hood Schifino. I think it would be just fine to take that risk if that were the case. If there was, and look, teams doing this are going to know if that's a possibility. Like, and a trade to come. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I think it's far more likely that the Lakers figure out a way to take Bronny James and then keep LeBron James playing, which is, and I get it. I get it, Laker fans. But if you listen to Jim Rome after us here on KFH, you get it. Like, they're fed up. They don't want LeBron picking players or picking coaches. But the reality is you're better with him than without him. There's just no question about that, right? At least for the next little while. And so you got to do everything. If he's ever on the fence, and you have the opportunity to make sure he stays on the right side of your fence, you just do it. You just do it. And you let that other stuff sort itself out. I know fans are going to drive you crazy. And it is not fair, maybe, that Bronny James gets selected into the NBA draft because his dad's LeBron. But we're talking, who cares? In reality, right? I'm not talking about the perception. I'm talking about the conversation. I'm talking about if you're the Lakers. Who cares? You mean you can? We've got a way to make sure LeBron plays for another couple of years? What do I need to do? Where do I sign? That's probably the mentality. It probably should be the mentality, quite frankly. And then you figure out a way to, through free agency, get some dudes that are going to get in there and help them win a championship. Find a consistent coach. I don't know. I'm a little surprised at, and I haven't necessarily heard like outrage about this or anything, but it's coming. I can see it coming from a mile away. I know how this conversation is going to be shifted. And it's going to be that the same thing it is now when LeBron just demands everything. He does. The NBA has that problem among its players, that the players, they dictate a lot of the things. Mike says, is Bronny really that good of a player? Again,
No.
He was not last year, but the circumstances last year don't give us a fair shake of that. He was a really good prospect that had a heart condition that really limited what he was able to do last year. We have no idea if he's that good of a player. That's why, and apparently he was going to go back to, or maybe this is still a possibility, to Duquesne, where he's got some family ties to the coach there. I don't know all that. I'm just seeing that this morning. I don't know if he's a good enough player. We didn't get the opportunity to see it last year. Let me tell you this, though. This I will say. Is he a good enough player for a team to take a flyer on and stick in the G League? Absolutely. Yes. Of course he is. Is he a good enough player to be in that league, in a developmental league? 100%. Every player that's highly touted as a high school player that teams could take a flyer on those guys. So at worst, if you're the Lakers, you could have drafted a better player. Okay. That's a crapshoot in the NBA draft anyway. At worst, Bronny James takes up a bench spot. That could be a little bit of a problem. But if you're the risk factor, what are you going to do in a worst case scenario? You're going to stick him in the G League and see if he develops.
Yeah, but then I mean,
So
what's the point then? Because then LeBron's not playing with his kid. His kid is in the G League.
Right. I know. I'm saying like worst case scenario, if you're the Lakers and LeBron retires or whatever, and you have Bronny James in the G League, that's not that bad of a worst case. Like, you've got a highly touted prospect who could continue to develop, who has, we know in pro sports, genetics matter, folks. Like, look at all the father-son things happening across the sports world. Really that crazy to take one of the two greatest basketball players of all time and his son, who is a great high school player, give him a shot in the G League? Like, that's not that bad. That's not that bad. It's certainly worth the risk to me, is I guess the point of this. Certainly worth the risk.
I'm okay with the risk for the Lakers. I wouldn't be okay with the risk for any other team to take Bronny.
Would you be okay with it if you knew, though, that team could then land LeBron? Like, if you knew it. I know we don't know it, but let's say LeBron said, I'm going to play wherever my son's playing.
You're mitigating your risk significantly if you know that LeBron's going to play for you. And so the Lakers have the benefit of the doubt because LeBron is already on the roster and he's got one more year left on his contract. So really the risk is lower for a team like the Lakers to take a flyer in the second round on Bronny James. The risk is that much more magnified for any other team in the NBA to draft Bronny and then cross their fingers and hope that LeBron will go to their team after next season. I just don't see that being a viable path.
Even for one season, it would be worth it. If you knew, if LeBron James came out and said, for 1 year, I will play for whoever the team that drafts my son is, because I want to play with my son. I think that would be worth it for most of the league. Not the league where the teams are already set up and competing for a title, but just about everybody else, right? Why not? And again, I'm not saying take Bronny third overall, which again, in this draft class, which I don't know anything about any of the players anyway. I don't even know how much I'd care about that. But
it's a pretty weak draft. Pretty weak player draft.
Right. It appears to be anyway. So then you get to this point of like, what risk reward? I think by the time the draft gets here, we will know if the Lakers care. Sorry, not if the Lakers, if LeBron cares enough, because he'll say something like that. He'll make that abundantly clear. I don't think a team would have to take a stab at the dark on that. That story's out there. He's doing well, I guess, in the combine, which increases the likelihood. It sounds like that he will stick around in the draft, and this will be a fun and juicy storyline to follow as we make our way through. We've got Royals baseball coming for you tonight on KFH. We can get back to the Royals in a little bit. The Shockers make some transfer noise. We can get a little bit into the player that they're bringing in, get you ready for some other things that are happening. Chiefs, Bengals. We've touched on all of these things. The IHOP hotline is open if you'd like to talk about any of them at 869-1240. We'll come back. More Sports Daily right after this.
Sometimes people tell us, I don't get it, it's just tea. But let me tell you, we are so much more than just tea. With more than 25 flavors, the possibilities are endless. Come on in and try them all for free to find your favorite or get us on the go for your busy lifestyle. And don't miss happy hour every day for half-price cups of tea. So the next time someone tells you it's just tea, tell them to come by and find out why we say drink tea, be happy. We have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor with you. Really appreciate you tuning in today on the program. Mornings at KFH, by the way, staff enjoys a great cup of coffee from Prairie Fire Coffee. Always appreciate Prairie Fire keeping us fueled up at the Odyssey office there, all the studios, everybody getting their fill. Tommy, the Shockers add their probably second to last piece yesterday, Corey Washington, out of St. Peter's. An interesting addition, certainly. An addition I think that does help them too, by the way, because it sort of fills a need. The one thing, I look at every time they sign a player, I'm like, how good a shooter are they? Are they a good three-point shooter, right? Corey Washington is not a good three-point shooter. However, it appears that on paper, I did not watch St. Peter's basketball last year. I have no problem admitting that. On paper, it would appear, though, that he is a creator offensively that plays sort of a position, I think, of need for the Shockers, a stretch forward. But look, 16 points and 6 rebounds for a team that made the NCAA tournament is good. Not a good three-point shooter, just under 31% last year. Didn't take a ton of them, in fact. But what he does appear to do, Tommy, is get to the free throw line. He took a lot of free throws last year, averaged almost 6 a game. That's the kind of we know, like if you're talking about the Shockers and what they need, somebody to get to the line is a big need. So in that way, it does seem like Corey Washington's a really nice fit. Not knowing anything about the player, because none of us have watched St. Peter's basketball. If you tell us that you have, you're a liar, probably. I don't want to paint too broadly a brush, though. But most of the time, like nobody's watching St. Peter's basketball. So we look at it on paper, and on paper, it does seem to fit a need. It does seem to be a good fit for Paul Mills and the staff.
Yeah, from an athleticism standpoint, I mean, he's got that. It seems like he's also got the ability, to play extended minutes and maybe even be a guy that, could be out on the court for close to 40 minutes of a game, which, I think is going to be important if you don't have a solid or really deep bench, and we'll see how that plays out. For the Shockers as things move forward. But I do like this piece as far as his size, his length, the way that he's able to, kind of stretch the floor and play that power forward role. I think that he would be somebody that you could have on the court at the same time as somebody like Ronnie DeGray and be effective with both of them together in that regard. But yeah, he's not an outside shooting threat really, but he does get to the line. He does make his free throws. And he does seem like the kind of guy that could go in and provide you with some athleticism that really the Shockers have needed.
They need creators offensively. Yeah. They need versatility offensively. They need creators offensively. They need to be a better defensive team. But I don't know how we're supposed to tell, right, if players coming in through the portal are good defenders or not. You hope that gets coached into them. I don't know how to tell that. I really don't. But offensively, we can look a little more closely at what they've done and see and try to guess at how that translates. Is 16 points a game at St. Peter's going to translate to 16 points a game in the American Athletic Conference? Probably not. I don't know that the Shockers would want it to. How many shots? Let me see how many shots a game he took to get to 16 last year. He took about just under 12 shots a game. At 45%, you could live with that. And they're going to need a shot. They're going to need shot takers. That part we know. And so when you look at it and you know that Rodgers isn't there, when you see historically what the opportunity has created for some of the players that have come in, even before Paul Mills took over, Jaquan Walton, right? Some of these guys that really thrived with a move up in competition because the Shockers always had that opportunity. I think there are chances all over the roster for these players that come in to get better than they were, Tommy, at the last place that they were. I really do.
Isn't it interesting? Like you look at some of these players that have taken a big step forward in their careers by playing at Wichita State, like a Jaquan Walton or even a Colby Rogers. But then you look at some of the bigger splashes, like the bigger name transfer portal players that are coming from larger programs down to Wichita State. Those haven't panned out, at the level that you would have liked them to see, like guys like Bijan Cortez and, mentioned Ronnie DeGray, some of these other guys that were part of the first transfer portal class from Paul Mills that were coming from larger D1 programs down to Wichita State. They have not really translated in the same way that like a Jaquan Walton has stepped up in the past, or a Colby Rogers has stepped up in the past. So, I do think it's going to be interesting to see if that trend continues with a guy like Corey Washington coming from St. Peter's.
Well, who knows? I mean, it could happen for a lot of the guys that they brought in. I think, again, for you and I to sit here and guess at that is us being not genuine to the reality. Tommy, I have not watched Corey Washington play basketball ever. I have never seen 1 second of him playing, nor have I seen 1 second of any of the players that they brought in. Okay. Like, that's the world that the Shockers live in, because they are not pulling in, some of these high profile, like we had all seen Hunter Dickinson play probably at Michigan before he came to Kansas. We're not living in that world with the players Wichita State's bringing in. So for us to sit here and say, oh yeah, I think Corey Washington's going to be a star for Wichita State.
Hard to tell.
We are pulling that out of our rears if you hear us saying that. We weren't watching him play at St. Peter's. And I think sometimes you do hear a lot of that stuff. And I get it. Like, everyone wants to be optimistic or pessimistic. But I remember some of the classes, like when Isaac Brown was bringing guys in that were, junior college guys you never heard of. It was like, oh, they're going to be terrible. And they were never terrible, right? They were players that fit. And they ended up being pretty good. And then you get mad that those players that you didn't think were going to be any good got good and left. So now you're mad about that. You know what I mean? So all we can look at is sort of like the profile and what they did, and does that fit? I think Corey Washington fits based on what he did. I think it fills a need, and a big need. They've got one more need they've got to get filled, and that's down low. They need a big man, and we'll see. They got one scholarship left. That has to be where they attack, you would think. How far down the rung are they going to have to end up? I mean, it has to be. So we'll see how Paul Mills finishes it up. And look, all things considered, I don't think this is a bad group coming in. I think they've got some guy. They brought in a shooter. They brought in a creator here. They brought in a point guard that doesn't turn the ball over. Those are needs. So we'll see how it all fits, obviously. But we don't know these players. And we're not ever going to pretend like we do know these players. If we do, we'll tell you. We don't most of the time when it comes to the Wichita State transfers lately. We'll come back. We'll wrap it up next.
Sometimes people tell us, I don't get it, it's just tea. But let me tell you, we are so much more than just tea. With more than 25 flavors, the possibilities are endless. Come on in and try them all for free to find your favorite, or get us on the go for your busy lifestyle. And don't miss happy hour every day for half-price cups of tea. So the next time someone tells you it's just tea, tell them to come by and find out why we say, drink tea, be happy. have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free.
That'll do it, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Nice active day on the video streams. Again, we'd invite you to share those out when you see them. If you are a consumer that way, let more people know about it. The more, the merrier. We'll continue to give away prizes here on the show. Got a big Wednesday coming up for you tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Paul Savage will be in to help out and join in the fun. Always an adventure with Mr. Savage, but we'll be there. Tommy, enjoy the day today.
Yeah, sounds great. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
For Tommy, for Jad, I'm Jacob. See you then.